Have you ever been to a place that feels wrong the moment you step into it? Not haunted, not cursed, just wrong. The kind of place where the air feels heavier, where even the wind seems to whisper things it shouldn't. That's how it felt when I arrived at the old countryside cemetery of Hollow Vale. It wasn't on any map I could find. The road that led there was narrow, cracked, and overgrown, the kind of road that looked like it hadn't seen a car in years. I wasn't supposed to be there, not really. I was just passing through, running from the noise of my own life, trying to find some peace and silence. But silence can be dangerous. It listens when no one else does. The cemetery sat on a hill that sloped toward a dried-up riverbed. The sign at the gate was unreadable, the letters eaten by time and rust. There were no flowers, no fresh graves, only leaning stones half swallowed by the earth, names erased by rain and years. The air smelled of damp soil and something older, something sour, like rot that had forgotten what was supposed to decay. I parked my truck near the gate, stepped out, and felt the ground sink slightly beneath my boots. The fog had already begun to creep in. I didn't know why I stopped. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was because of that one grave, the one that stood perfectly straight among the crooked ones. White marble, clean as bone, with a number carved instead of a name. Grave number 47. That was all it said. No date, no symbol, no flowers. Just that number, carved deep enough to look fresh. Something about it made me pause. It didn't belong there. The other graves were ancient, worn down, forgotten. But this one, it was new, untouched by moss or dust. Almost like it had been placed there recently. And though I didn't realize it then, that grave had been waiting for me. I stood there longer than I meant to. The fog thickened around my legs, curling like smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cried once and then went silent. The world felt still, too still. I turned to leave, but before I reached the truck, I heard it, a sound I couldn't explain. A faint, hollow tapping, like knuckles against wood. It came from behind me, from grave number 47. I froze. My breath came out in white bursts. Maybe it was just the wind, I told myself, or water dripping somewhere under the soil. But it came again. Tap, 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 3 times. Slow, deliberate, like someone knocking. I should have left. Any sane person would have. But fear has a strange way of turning into curiosity, and curiosity has a way of turning into mistakes. I found myself walking back toward the grave, my heart pounding louder with each step. The air grew colder. When I reached it, I saw something that stopped me cold. There was a crack in the marble. Thin, almost invisible, but inside it, something moved. It was small at first, like a trick of the light. But then the soil beneath the stone began to shift ever so slightly, like something breathing underneath. I stumbled back, pulse racing. The tapping stopped. Then silence again. Heavy, suffocating. And in that silence, I could have sworn I heard a voice. Faint, childlike, whispering through the mist. It said just 2 words, help me. I didn't sleep that night. I tried, parked just down the dirt road in my truck. Windows fogged up, headlights off. But the words wouldn't leave my head. Help me. That voice was too soft to be real. Too fragile to belong to the living. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that white marble grave. The crack running through it like a scar. The air outside hummed with that same quiet dread, and the night pressing on all sides, thick and watchful. Somewhere beyond the fog, an owl cried, and the sound felt like a warning. By dawn, I convinced myself it had all been my imagination. Maybe the sound came from an animal. Maybe the whisper was just wind passing through the trees. That's what I told myself as I started the truck. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the fog hadn't moved. It just hung there, unmoving, like it was waiting. And I swear, for a second, I saw something pale standing near the gate. Small, still, watching me. Instead of driving away, I did the stupid thing. I turned the truck off and went back. Curiosity again, right? Or maybe something stronger than that. The cemetery looked different in the daylight. Quieter. Harmless, almost. The fog had lifted just enough for me to see the full stretch of graves, rows upon rows of forgotten names. Only grave number 47 gleamed, like it had been scrubbed clean overnight. Kneeling beside it, I noticed something new. The soil at its base had been disturbed, soft and uneven, like it had been dug up, then covered again. The edges were too neat, too recent. My fingers brushed the dirt and it crumbled easily. I don't know what made me do it, but I started digging, just a little, just enough to see what was beneath. A few inches down, my hand hit something cold. Metal. I cleared more soil, and a small brass locket appeared. It was old, tarnished, the chain snapped. I wiped it clean and opened it. Inside was a photograph, blurred with age but still visible. It showed a little girl, maybe 7 or 8. She had dark hair tied in ribbons, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Beneath the photo, there were 2 words etched faintly in cursive, for Clara. My stomach dropped. The voice from last night, it was a girl's voice. Help me. The connection was too clear to ignore. But something else caught my eye then. A name scratched faintly into the back of the locket. Not engraved, but carved like someone had done it with a nail or a knife. It read, Eleanor Price. I looked around. No grave with that name. I walked row by row, scanning stones, whispering her name under my breath. Nothing, until I noticed the numbers. Every grave had 1, carved small, under the name. 41, 42, 43. They went in order, except for 47. There was number 46, number 48. Just empty ground on either side of that white stone. And then I saw something else. At the edge of the cemetery, near the old caretaker's shack, a single rusted shovel leaning against the wall. It looked recently used. I called out, hello? Anyone here? No answer. Just the creak of the shack door as it swayed slightly in the breeze. I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mildew. Shelves lined the walls. Old lanterns, cracked jars, faded burial records. One of them caught my attention. A leather-bound book with the words Hollowvale Burial Register embossed on the cover. I opened it carefully, pages yellow and brittle. Each line listed a name, date, and grave number. I traced my finger down the list until I reached the end. The last entry read, the ink was darker than the rest. Fresher. Someone had written it recently. And right below that line, a new one was being added, half finished, written in shaky handwriting. I squinted to read it. And then my own name. I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath caught in my throat. The pen that had written it was still there, rolling slowly across the desk, as if someone had just set it down. I spun around, but the shack was empty. Only the echo of my own breathing filled the air. Outside, the fog had started to roll in again, thicker, faster, swallowing the graves one by one. And somewhere deep in that gray mist, I heard it again, the tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from grave number 47. I didn't run. Not yet, because something in me still needed to know. Who was Eleanor Price? What happened here? And why did her grave know my name? By the time I stepped out of the caretaker's shack, the fog had swallowed half the graveyard. It moved strangely, like it had a pulse of its own, wrapping itself around the stones, hiding shapes that seemed to flicker when I blinked. I could barely see my truck anymore, just the outline of its headlights glowing weakly through the mist. I should have left right then. But something deeper than fear held me there. Something that felt like recognition, like the land itself was whispering my name. I walked back toward grave number 47, clutching that burial register like a shield. The wind was cold now, colder than before, slicing through my jacket as I knelt before the marble stone again. The crack running through it had widened. I swear it wasn't like that earlier. Tiny flakes of marble littered the ground, as if something underneath was pushing, straining, trying to get out. I placed my hand on the stone. It was warm, too warm, and the moment my skin touched it, a sound filled my head, a low, echoing hum that wasn't coming from outside. It was inside me, vibrating through my bones. I staggered back, clutching my ears, but it wasn't a noise I could block out. It was like someone whispering directly into my mind. A child's voice again. You shouldn't be here. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. Who are you? I whispered into the fog. What do you want from me? The wind howled in answer, and for a moment, I thought that was all I'd get. But then, from somewhere beneath the soil, came a faint reply. Words drawn out, trembling. Find what he did, find what he buried. I turned toward the caretaker's shack again, but something had changed. The ground near the back wall looked uneven, freshly turned. I ran to it, kicked away the loose dirt, and my foot hit wood. Another box. Not a coffin. Smaller, square, locked with rusted metal hinges. I pried it open with a broken shovel, the hinges squealing in protest. Inside were old newspaper clippings, photographs, and a thin diary wrapped in a rotting ribbon. The articles were yellowed and fragile, but the headlines were clear enough to read. Local girl missing. 7-year-old Eleanor Price last seen near Hollowvale Cemetery. Caretaker questioned, released due to lack of evidence. Cemetery closed after unidentified graves discovered. I flipped through the diary, my hand shaking. The handwriting was neat, careful at first, then messier as the pages went on. It belonged to the caretaker himself, Thomas Hale. The first entries were ordinary, notes about the weather, repairs, visitors. But then the tone changed. He started writing about voices in the ground, about shadows that moved when the moon rose. One passage froze my blood. The girl won't stop crying. I told her it wasn't my fault. The others, they made me do it. But she keeps calling from the grave, and I can't dig her up again. I can't. The others? Who were the others? I turned the page, but it was smeared, the ink bleeding into the paper like tears. Only one line was still legible, written in thick, desperate strokes. Grave number 47 will stay sealed. It must stay sealed. If it opens again, he'll take another. I stared at that line, my pulse roaring in my ears. He'll take another. The grave wasn't just a burial site. It was a warning. And if the caretaker was right, then it hadn't been opened again until now. The air grew colder. I looked up, and the fog had shifted again. The grave seemed closer somehow, the rows twisting slightly, like the land itself was changing shape. Then, from the mist, a figure emerged. A man, old, hunched, wearing what looked like a caretaker's coat, faded, covered in dirt. His eyes caught mine, and for a moment, I thought maybe he was alive. But as he stepped closer, I saw the truth. His skin was pale and cracked like dried clay, and his movements were wrong. Too stiff, too slow. He stopped just a few feet from me, head tilted, and spoke in a rasping whisper. You shouldn't have come back. I stumbled backward, clutching the diary. Who are you? He smiled, a horrible, broken thing. You already know. The fog swirled around him, and for a moment, his form flickered. Beneath the caretaker's face, I saw something else. A hollow-eyed shape with long, skeletal fingers clutching the edges of the fog like a curtain. The air hummed again, that same low vibration from before. And then, he said something I'll never forget. She wants you to take her place. The words hit me like ice water. What? He raised a trembling hand, pointing toward grave number 47. Every grave must have a keeper. Every name must have a number. You opened it. Now it's yours. Before I could speak, the ground trembled beneath me. The marble stone split completely, collapsing inward. From the darkness below came a rush of air, cold, wet, alive. A pale hand shot out from the soil, clutching the edge of the grave. Then another, and slowly, impossibly, something began to pull itself out. It was her, the girl from the photograph. But her skin was gray and slick with mud, her eyes milky white, lips moving soundlessly. She reached toward me, fingers trembling. I should have run. I should have done anything but stand there. But when she spoke, her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a scream. Help me? The world tilted. My vision went black for a second. When I came to, I was on the ground, the fog pressing down on me like a blanket. The caretaker's figure was gone. The girl was gone. Only the grave remained, open, empty, waiting. When I opened my eyes, it was night again. I don't remember blacking out. One moment, I was standing at the edge of that open grave, and the next, I was lying on the ground beside it, the sky above me dark and silent. My head throbbed. My hands were covered in dirt, and the fog had thinned just enough for me to see the outlines of the graves around me. For a second, I thought maybe I had imagined everything. The voice, the caretaker, the girl. Maybe I'd fallen, hit my head, and dreamed it all. But then I saw the shovel. It was standing upright beside grave number 47, its handle buried deep in the soil, the blade glinting wet under the moonlight. Fresh dirt was piled high beside the open hole. My stomach dropped as I realized what it meant. Someone or something had been digging while I was unconscious. I forced myself to look inside. The grave was deeper now, the sides of the pit slick with mud. But there was something else, something pale at the bottom, not a coffin, not a body. It was a mirror, a rectangular, dirt-stained mirror lying flat in the soil, its cracked surface catching the faint moonlight. I stared down at it, my breath fogging the air. My reflection wavered, distorted by the uneven glass. For a heartbeat, I saw only myself. But then the image changed. The reflection moved without me. My mirrored self smiled, slow and unnatural, head tilting just like the caretaker's had. Then it whispered, "You shouldn't have dug." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a broken headstone. The reflection didn't disappear. It climbed. Hands pressed against the inside of the glass, fingers spreading, cracking it further like it was pushing through from the other side. I heard the sound of glass breaking, soil shifting, and then silence. When I looked again, the mirror was gone. Only a shallow pool of muddy water remained. My pulse was wild, breath ragged. I turned to run, but something caught my leg, cold, hard fingers wrapping around my ankle, yanking me down. I kicked, clawed, screamed, but it was useless. The ground beneath me felt alive, pulling me closer. I dug my nails into the dirt, but it kept dragging me in, inch by inch, until I was halfway buried. And then I saw her again. The girl, Clara or Eleanor, whatever her name truly was. She was standing on the other side of the grave, her small frame silhouetted by the fog, ribbons hanging limp in her hair. Her face was calm now, peaceful. "You found me," she said softly. "Now I can rest." I gasped. "What do you want from me?" Her eyes lifted, empty, endless. "Not me," she whispered. "Him." Before I could ask what she meant, I felt a second grip, stronger, colder, a man's hand this time. I looked down, and through the muck I saw him, the caretaker, Thomas Hale, his face twisted, his jaw slack, eyes burning with something that wasn't human. He was pulling me down, his lips moving, but the words came out like a hiss of air. Every grave must have a keeper. I screamed and kicked, my fingers scraping against the headstone, searching for anything to hold on to. My nails tore, my breath caught, and then suddenly, everything stopped. The hands released me. The fog lifted. The night grew painfully quiet. I was lying on solid ground again. The grave was sealed. Perfectly, like it had never been opened. I scrambled to my feet, chest heaving, heart hammering in my ears. The marble stone stood tall again, clean and unbroken. The number 47 gleamed under the moonlight. And then I saw it. The inscription had changed. Where before there had only been a number, there was now something new carved beneath it. Fresh, deep, unmistakable. I stumbled back, shaking my head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. But it was there, etched into the stone as if it had always been. And beneath my name, a single word. I turned toward my truck, desperate to leave. But something was wrong. It looked different, older, dust-covered, the tires half sunk into the mud, like it had been sitting there for years. My keys were gone. My phone was dead. The world around me felt frozen. Then I heard it again, the faint tapping. Slow, steady, coming from under the ground. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from inside my grave. I fell to my knees, clawing at the soil, but the earth didn't move. It was solid, unyielding. I screamed until my voice broke, but no sound left the cemetery. The fog was returning, curling to the trees like smoke, and through it, I could see movement, shapes, pale and flickering, watching me from between the stones. The others, the forgotten. And then I understood. The caretaker hadn't buried Eleanor. He'd buried himself. Over and over, trapped by whatever lived beneath this cursed ground. And now I'd taken his place. The fog closed in, swallowing everything. My vision blurred. My thoughts began to fade, and the last thing I remember was a whisper of a little girl's voice, soft and distant. "Thank you for helping me." When morning came, the fog was gone. The cemetery was silent. Grave number 47 stood perfectly in line with the others, white marble gleaming in the sunlight. No one ever noticed the fresh soil around its base, or the faint sound that sometimes came from below when the wind was still. Tap, tap, tap. Just 3 knocks, waiting for the next curious soul who forgets that some graves don't stay closed.